and we have really good information to share with all of you. So we are now at 190 attendees so far. About 400, I think it was like maybe 450 or 496, I think it was the last time I looked, of people who signed up for the workshop, the webinar. One thing is that we are going to be recording. This is going to be recorded. So if you do have to leave early, which we hopefully try to keep you on as much as we can, or if you know a scholar that wanted to participate and couldn't, we will be sending this out at a later date. But there's nothing better like listening to the workshop live and being able to ask your questions. All right, so I'm going to start, and I want to, again, welcome every single one of you to this workshop. This is the first day of our leadership workshop, and this year we decided to focus on money. And money is a good thing. Scholarship dollars and scholarship money have helped many, many people get to school and get to college, and it's a great investment in our young people, and being a good leader means being responsible with your money. So we all know we want to live good lives, and the next 3 days are going to teach us how to maximize the resources we have in our hands, and in our financial life department, how we can build wealth. So today, the first day, we will focus on paying for college. And you know, there are a couple of things that we're going to talk about, like meeting the gap, ways to look for other forms of dollars to pay for unmet need. And tomorrow, we're going to focus on fundraising, and not just fundraising to meet the unmet gap, but also looking ahead. We know that there are many of you who want to go to graduate school, and we want to see you go to graduate school, and we know it's possible. So tomorrow we'll have some dreamers who have gone to law school, have gone to medical school, with us sharing their anecdotes and how they did it. And then the third day is going to be on personal finances. So I'm really excited to kick off today's presentation. And today's presentation is going to be given by our friends at the Scholarship Foundation of St. Louis. This is a scheduled 90-minute presentation, which includes the presentation, Q&A, and surveys. So stay with us the whole time. You'll have opportunities to raise your hand, and if chosen to ask your question, you'll be unmuted. And once you're unmuted, you can ask your questions, and we'll have an interaction back and forth. Those brave souls that speak out will be getting gift cards from us. So we'll be annotating your name and sending you gift cards after the presentation. So hopefully we have a lot of you who are interested in that. But there's also going to be opportunities for you to ask questions through the chat box and the question box, actually. So you can put your questions there. And my colleague David, who has been working on this presentation along with the Dream.Us team, is going to help us get those questions answered. So please help me thank and welcome Faith Sandler. She's a 28-year executive director of the Scholarship Foundation of St. Louis. She's dedicated her life to work on expanding opportunities for students who want to enter higher education, and she is one of Dreamers' biggest champions. We love her, and we're so excited that she is with us. Faith, please take the floor.
Sorry, Gabby, just real quick before Faith goes on, I think because I can't show my screen for the presentation, so I don't think anyone else can see the PowerPoint. I'm gonna go ahead and show my screen now. Can you hear me, Gabby, and can you still talk?
Yes, I can hear you, and I can see that something is happening, but
okay.
Yeah, are you sharing your screen now?
I am going to right now, so hopefully everyone can see me, and
Perfect. Yeah.
and then so this is Faith.
Faith,
Faith,
take the call.
are you?
We don't hear you just yet, so you still might be on mute. Okay, so we're waiting for Faith. And
Felipe, are you and Diana on as well?
Give me 1 second. I'm going to get my audio.
okay.
No worries.
So as I was telling you all a little bit about Faith, Faith has been working for 28 years. Oh, there she is.
I'm here, thanks to Felipe. For some reason, my audio was muted. So, sorry for the delay, but delighted to be a guest of TheDream.Us and with all of you today. It's wonderful to sit in St. Louis, Missouri in the 96-degree heat and imagine all of you dialed in and ready to take charge of your future. So thank you for being with us today. The Scholarship Foundation of St. Louis, as you saw in the literature that you got before today, is almost 100 years old. We were founded in 1920 specifically with the intention of supporting immigrant students who had come to the St. Louis metropolitan region and needed a way to enter the workforce and needed the training and education that they did not have when they arrived here. So dreams are the source of our origin and still what fuel us today. We do a couple of things that we want you to be aware of. First of all, we make interest-free loans and grants to about 600 students annually. Those are students pursuing 2- and 4-year degrees, and they're all from the St. Louis metropolitan area. We also provide a host of other opportunities to those students, like paid internships and the kinds of things that will help them learn and practice what they are learning out in the real world and contribute to the community. And thirdly, we provide a significant amount of guidance and advice to students and their families who are trying to figure out how to achieve a post-secondary education without the financial resources immediately available. So Felipe, who you'll meet in a minute, and his colleagues work with some 3,000 area students and families every year, really on one set of big questions. How can you best finance your route to higher education? How can you reduce risk and debt in the process? And how can you make certain you have the financial resources you need to succeed? So we're excited to share that information today with all of the scholars nationally who are on the line. And I'm ready for the next slide, David. So the first statement we wanted to say was congratulations. The fact that you have the scholarship from the TheDream.Us is a really big deal. And we want to stop and pause at the beginning of our time with you just to say congratulations to you for succeeding in that effort, for those of you who are continuing in your studies, for earning a continuation of your scholarship. It's important, and we want to celebrate that. And we want to say you're not done yet. So a lot of our work is with students as they go along the route to college, helping to make certain and through college that they can take full advantage of all the resources available, that they have the knowledge and the access to expertise to advocate for themselves. So to speak out, to ask the questions, to raise your hand when you need assistance and get the information you need to advocate for yourself. And then, as Gabby mentioned, to be in a position to eventually help and mentor others who come along behind you and beside you who may encounter some of the same issues that you will encounter as you proceed through college. In other words, the spirit with which we're entering this webinar is to say, we want you to drive. We want you to have the information you need to navigate on that journey. You will learn in the process, and we love doing what we can to make that possible. The stakes are high. It's your life. We want you to go where you intend to go. No question is unwise. It's complicated bits of information, and we want you to feel free to ask any question as we go. I'm going to now introduce my colleague and dear friend, Felipe. Felipe's actually even cooler than he looks on this picture on your screen. Felipe is a first-generation college graduate, and he serves as the immigrant student advisor here at the Scholarship Foundation of St. Louis. Felipe's work centers primarily on supporting undocumented students' access to post-secondary education. That's everything from helping families understand what the college-going process will be, to putting together the financial aid, to helping track the credits necessary to graduate, and just being an available listening ear and resource to students as they walk through the process. Felipe has provided a lot of training and resource to area guidance counselors in our region and to our colleagues in other nonprofits who are not fully versed in the issues that face undocumented students and know very little about the resources and the opportunities available. Felipe is originally from California, where he worked for 6 years coordinating a Gear Up grant in San Diego. And he's a devoted and passionate advocate for students, and I think you'll learn a lot by listening to Felipe today.
All right, hello. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Hello, everyone. As Faith said, my name is Felipe, and I'm the Immigrant Student Advisor here at the Scholarship Foundation of St. Louis. And I just want to say thank you to TheDream.Us for inviting me to speak today with all of you. I'm really excited about this opportunity and the work that we've done leading up to today. And at the top, what I really want to say is I just want to let each and every participant who's out there know that I love being a student advisor. The reason I love being a student advisor, doing the work that I do, is because I really get to help students and center students, right? Make sure that they have the information, that every little question they may have gets answered. And if I don't have the answer, I'm someone who definitely wants to go out and find it. It's student-centered. It's not about me, this work, right? It's about the students. At one time, it was about me. I myself was a student with very little resources, very little advice, very little money. For a long time through my college education, I just winged it and did my very best. I didn't really have anyone I could turn to ask questions of, and so that's why coming out of college, I became a student advisor. It was just something that I knew I could do. All right, so let's get started today. David, if you could please bring up the first question. All right, so here's a quick survey. We're going to ask this question. How confident are you that you have sufficient information to assess your ability to pay for your college education? Please select one. Not confident, somewhat confident, confident, or very confident. This should take about 10 to 15 seconds, so we'll go ahead and let you click on that.
All right, so it looks like we have about 80% of folks who have voted. So like Felipe said, we'll be closing here in a couple of seconds. If you haven't answered the question, make sure you do that now. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this first question.
All right, so there we have the responses. Give me 1 second. It looks like the majority of folks on the line, 61%, report that they're somewhat confident about how they're going to fund or their ability to pay for their college education. 23% are confident, only 2% are very confident, right? And 13% are not confident. So that's a range, but we see that the majority are somewhat confident. And what's great is that it's great to be somewhat confident. You still want to ask questions. You still want to investigate. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because At the end of this presentation, we want everyone to be confident or very confident. And how do we do that? Well, that's what this webinar is about. We want to make sure that each student has the tools to make the honest measurements of two things, both expenses and resources, right? So we want to measure what our expenses are and what our resources are. And we need to check, do they match up? Not only do they match up for the year, but do they match up for the next 4 years or however many years you're going to be into school until completion, right? And if they don't match up, if those honest measurements don't match up, how do we make them do that? How can we adjust our plans so that they do? You all may have heard that old saying, you measure twice and you cut once. So today we're going to be learning about the measurements, making sure that those are accurate as can be. All right? So this takes us to our first slide of Math 101. So Math 101, what goes into the math? Figuring out how we're going to pay for college. Well, we're going to talk about the COA, or the cost of attendance. We're going to talk about the EFC, the estimated family contribution. We'll talk about grants and scholarships, and we'll talk about how you assess need. All right, so these are the 4 components, and we'll talk about these more in depth as we go along. David, please, next slide. So cost of attendance, often abbreviated as COA. Cost of attendance is everything. Every single thing that is a cost. David? There we go. Cost of attendance is everything. It includes tuition, fees, books, room and board, cost of living, transportation, and your miscellaneous costs. All of that counts as your cost of attendance. It's not enough to just look at your school's website and say, oh, tuition and fees are this, because that's not your true cost of attendance. A lot more goes into living your life as a college student than tuition and fees alone. All right? Next slide, David, please. So let's talk about tuition. There are a few ways we can go about tuition, or the few ways that colleges go about assessing tuition. There's a flat rate. So some colleges, and this is something that each individual student on the webinar today can go do their research and find out. Some colleges offer what's called a flat rate. And that flat rate says that per semester, a student can take anywhere from 12 to 18 credit hours for the same flat price. For our example, we'll use $3,000, all right? And we'll use that later on, but a flat cost. So that means you could take 18 credit hours or you could take 12, and it's going to cost you the same amount. Next bullet. And then we have the cost per credit hour. So there are some colleges that don't give a flat fee, but what they are doing is they're assessing the fees per credit hour. And then there's also the cost per major or program. It's not enough to say, this is what my school's cost is. You have to look at your specific major, your specific program. Here I think specifically of students who are in the STEM fields, right, or maybe in the healthcare professions. You may have higher cost as a nursing major as opposed to someone who's studying fine arts, but maybe not. Again, this is where we have to be honest and go and look for that information to assess that cost of tuition. Next slide, please. Fees. We all know about these, but sometimes we don't, right? They just pop up. What kind of fees are there? First, we have mandatory fees. Those are fees that everyone's got to pay. They often include student activity fees, things that are non-negotiable, right? Next, you have cost per major, per program, or per course. So this means, okay, I'm a nursing major, and I have a different cost, different fees assessed for my major. Or maybe I participate in a program. I'm in the honors program for my nursing degree, so I'm assessed fees for not only the major, but the program also. And then maybe you say, I don't have fees for my major or my program, but you may end up taking a course that actually assesses extra fees for that one particular course, right? It could be something like a chem lab, meaning particular types of equipment, things like that, they may charge a fee automatically for that course. So you want to definitely be aware of that. And then there's health insurance, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, and if we're not, you will be. So make sure you pay attention to your health insurance fees. They are going to pop up on your bill of statement, and we're going to hear from a student later on who's going to talk a little bit about that. Next, we have lab fees. So that's what I was talking about. They often come with courses, but you could have lab fees for fine arts as well, right? You got to buy the clay, you got to buy the paint, you got to buy the brushes. Sometimes those are provided via lab fees. And then, of course, there are the quote-unquote hidden fees, right? The fees that maybe I don't even know how to really speak to, but they're going to show up on your bill, right? And your college is going to say, nope, that's your fee. But it's really important at this point to think about asking questions about those fees. Maybe you'll find everyone's got to pay that fee, it's non-negotiable. But you may also find out, oh my gosh, I'm a human being over here at the college, and I realize you don't actually have to be charged that fee, so let me take that off your bill. It's good to ask questions. It's good to know what you're being charged. Next slide, please. What else goes into cost of attendance is books. Books is going to be really big for you. David, we have 4 bullet points here, so if you could just bring them up. And students, I'm going to ask that you look into your the dashboard. Those are documents that were, excuse me, not dashboard, handouts. You'll see that there are a number of handouts for you in the toolbar, and one of those handouts is a textbooks resource page. You can either look at that or I can just tell you about it, but what this is really saying is think about how you spend money on books while you're in school, right? You can definitely buy used books if that works. You really got to think about it. You can buy digital books, so think about Kindle, Amazon, go online, Google. Is there a digital copy of this textbook out there? Because oftentimes you'll be able to find it. This resource page is also going to give you a number of websites that you can go to look for textbook rentals, which are really, really big help. Sometimes you don't need to buy the book brand new. You can rent it. When you rent books, you want to think about what book you're renting and what comes with that book. In this case, I'm thinking about math courses, right? So you buy a math book, it comes with extra software, a CD in the back that you're going to use for the course. Well, if that CD is required, you're only going to be able to use it once, so you probably wouldn't want to rent that textbook. You'd probably want to buy it. But, you know, if it's, say, history, any other kind of textbook or any book that you need to buy for a class, you can definitely rent it. As well, share your textbooks with your peers. You must remember to, at the end of every semester, resell your books. You don't need them anymore. Trust me, I have bookshelves of textbooks that I never sold back, and I'm like, that's money gone, right? So resell your books. Go to the bookstore, and if your bookstore on campus does not buy back that particular book, go to Amazon. Go look out in the community and see if there's another bookstore that buys textbooks. Oftentimes they're out there. And also, don't hesitate to reach out to your professors. Sometimes professors have extra copies of textbooks that they get from the publisher. And so you're never going to know, and we'll just keep repeating that throughout this presentation, but you're never going to know unless you ask. And so being just real with your professor and saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to have a hard time affording this book this semester. Do you know of any resources? You may just find out that professor says, hey, you know what, I actually have an extra book. I'm going to let you borrow it, right? And so that's why it's really important to communicate with your professors, or at least just one of the reasons why it's really important. Slide, please. Next, let's talk about room and board, or cost of living. There are 3 bullet points here, David, and you can just pull them up. So room and board, that's pretty straightforward. I think everybody knows what that is. You're paying for a dorm room if you live on campus, and you're paying for a meal plan if you eat and live on campus. If you live off campus, well, lots of folks tend to think, okay, I don't have a room and board cost because I live off campus, right? But unless you're living with someone who pays your rent and buys all your food, you still have a room and board cost. right? It may be less than what it would be living on campus. It may be more. You're not going to know until you actually assess those expenses. So you want to sit there and think about, how much am I paying for rent every month? How much am I paying for my utilities? How much food am I buying? Do I need to stop eating out as much as I eat out? Because when I was in college, I ate out as much as I could, but that's not the most, affordable way to live while you're in college. And so now's a good time early on to start to rein in those habits and think about, what's my room and board cost? And really think about it in the long term. I would say get a refund check from a scholarship when I was in college, and I would just take my friends to P.F. Chang's, and we would eat dinner, and I'd be like, oh, don't worry, everyone. I know you're all college students, so am I, but I just got my food, right? So I'd start spending my refund check on friends. But really, that was part of my room and board, and I was actually raising my costs that way. So we want to be mindful about the cost of living, room and board. Next slide, please, David. So here's a question. Do you live on campus or off campus? And if you live off campus, do you live alone or with your family? And we'll give you some time here to answer in the toolbar this quick survey.
So sorry guys, see me. Give me a second here.
Okay, the poll will open in just a second.
Okay, here we go.
There we go, everyone. Do you live on campus or off campus?
So we'll give folks about 5 more seconds to vote. Looks like we have about 90% of our audience that has voted. So I'm going to go ahead and close this just for time.
All right, so 90% reported. And this information is going to be helpful not only to us today in the webinar, but it's going to be helpful to TheDream.Us, who is going to be looking at these numbers and making sure that they're supporting students the best way they can. So you want to make sure you're answering these questions. So it looks like it's pretty even on campus, off campus, with 62% do report that living off campus with their family. And so your room and board costs are probably lower than a student living on campus. However, you don't want to just throw it out the window. You want to honestly think about which costs you accrue while you're living in your family's home. Because what I've found working with students is about 95% of students have financial responsibilities within their own household. They're helping pay bills, they're paying insurance, they're paying the lights, they're helping folks get around town by driving the car, and they're paying for gas. So think about those as expenses, because they definitely are expenses coming out of your pocket, and you want to account for them, as accurately as possible. Great. So next slide. So the next thing that goes into your cost of attendance is transportation. We all use transportation. We all use it differently. For some of us, it costs money. For others who are probably on foot, not so much. But let's think about this. Transportation, daily driving. We tend to think this does not cost me anything because I'm just going down the street. But daily driving does have a cost on your life, right? You're going to be paying for insurance. You're going to be paying for gas. And this could be to and from work. This could be to and from school. Anything, right? So daily driving is a big one. The next one is airfare. So if you're going to school out of state, you definitely want to account for airfare at the beginning of the year, of the school year. You want to think about how many times can I afford to fly back and forth home. It's not just something that you say, I'll think about that later. You can think about that early on and plan for that cost. All right. Next slide, please. And then miscellaneous, ... right? Because everybody's miscellaneous is going to be different. Miscellaneous is that catch-all. It's everything that we haven't talked about yet. All right? So only you know what those miscellaneous costs are, and this is your opportunity to sit down and think about, what are my miscellaneous costs? I encourage you all to sit down and actually write out everything you spend money on that doesn't fall into any of the categories that we've talked about. And what you'll find is you pay for supplies, software, Remember that if you have DACA or TPS, you're paying for renewal fees. You may be paying a lawyer to help you out with that process, and you can account for that cost well in advance, right? And maybe that cost won't be something you have every year, but the year that you will have that cost, you want to make sure that you account for it. You also pay for computers or software, laundry, cell phones. You pay for student clubs, Pilates. You pay for tickets to games, concerts. You pay to have your car fixed or fixed up, for moving, storing stuff, for clothing. So, right, as I list this, probably students are thinking, oh my gosh, I spent so much money. And you do. And what we're talking about today is really thinking about those things, being honest with yourself, because, like I said in the beginning, none of this is for me. This isn't for the Dream, and this isn't for the Scholarship Foundation. This is for each participant on the webinar today. This is your chance to learn about how to assess those costs. All right? Great. So let's go to the next slide, please, David. All right. So looking back at our math grid, we have just touched on COA, or cost of attendance, which is really the baseline number, right? We each have a cost of attendance, and even if we go to the same school, that cost of attendance can vary greatly depending on our lifestyles, what kinds of other obligations we have in life. So that's your cost of attendance. That's your number you're going to start with. And next we're going to talk about the EFC, the expected family contribution, and grant aid, which once we take those away from the cost of attendance, those are two things that are going to help us knock down our cost of attendance. It's going to leave us with our unmet need, right? And we'll talk about how to get, how to fulfill that unmet need. But before we do that, we have a question up, and a new poll is going to go up here in just a moment. And that is, I'm sorry, it's not a poll. It's an open question. It's, do you have any questions about cost of attendance? And David, I hope you can give the participants a minute here so that you can think about, do you have any questions about your cost of attendance, the overall arching philosophy cost of attendance? Now would be a good time to enter those in.
Yeah.
And David, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right, Felipe. And just reminding folks that you can actually type in your questions, and so that Gabby and I will be filtering and making sure that we're answering relevant questions throughout the presentation as well as at the end. We wanted to make sure that we gave folks, throughout the presentation a chance to ask some questions. We know that it's a lot of information.
And we actually have some questions right now coming in through people are raising their hands. So let's take a question from Sarah. I see Sarah raising her hand. And Sarah, we're going to unmute you now. Sarah, can you hear us? Hey, okay. What's your question? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for allowing me to ask the question. I want to say thank you for all of you guys, because that Dream Scholarship has done so much for me, and I can't tell you how much grateful I am for that. So I do have a question when it's come to the cost of attendance, because I attend school from Monday to Thursday. My only day off is Friday, and that's the day I do everything you could think of that I need to do to survive and maintaining my life here in New York. And I work 12 hours Saturday, 12 hours on Sunday. So that's just enough amount of money for me to, pay transportation and everything. So like I say, I'm grateful for the scholarship, which pay my tuition and help me attend school. But really, sometimes I can't afford to meet her needs, And I'm wondering if there's anything other than the scholarship that is out there for us to get help and get a little bit money on the side to help us living the student life.
Yes, and am I answering this question, David?
Yeah, please feel free to.
I will, and your name was Sarah, right?
Yes, yeah, and I'm talking especially when it's come to personal expenses,
Right.
transportation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So we're going to touch on that, definitely, because what you're talking about is kind of that extra stuff, that miscellaneous or that unmet need, right?
Yeah.
And so we'll be talking about just kind of some places, not specifically necessarily always where you can go, but some places you can keep an eye on for opportunities that maybe open up.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
That's a great
Definitely.
question, Sarah. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions, Gabby?
We do have other questions. So let's take a question from Antonio. Antonio, we're gonna unmute you now. Antonio, can you hear us? Antonio, you can talk now. You've been unmuted.
He might be having difficulty with the.
Okay, so let's take a question from Gabriel. Gabriel, we're going to be unmuting you now. Go ahead, Gabriel.
Hello?
Hey, yes, we can hear you.
Hello, good afternoon. How you guys doing? I'd just like to say thank you so much for this opportunity and let me apply for the scholarship. I actually got wind of the scholarship through my brother, who actually applied for it a couple years ago, and he got it, and he told me about it. And since I just found out I got it, it's gonna be a real relief because little life story. I was a college student like 10 years ago, but due to financial incapabilities back then, I couldn't. Due to financial incapabilities, I couldn't attend college, so I plan to go back. And one of my major questions, actually two questions, was that if I got the scholarship and I decided to change my major, would that be okay? And is there things like grants also available that I can apply for also?
So, Gabriel, what college are you at?
I'm currently re-enrolled in the New York City College of Technology, City Tech in Brooklyn, New York.
That's great. So
shout out to the other girl. Hey, New York in here.
So we're right now going to try to focus on cost of attendance, but I want to make sure that we do answer your question.
No problem.
Is you do have to look at that because when you change your major, especially if you've already been 2 or 3 years into your major, might cause you to have to pick up new classes. And so while I think it's important that people follow their passions, you also have to be aware of the cost involved in that. So you can potentially add on a lot of costs to your college education by changing your major because now you're going to have to take a lot more classes that
I understand. Yeah, that question came because when he spoke about the nursing, I asked a question because since he said the nursing is expensive, I plan to actually switch from nursing to engineering, and because I'm just gonna start college in the fall semester that's coming up. I want to find out if I can do that beforehand. So I haven't really started yet. I just enrolled, but I haven't really started yet. So just wanted to know.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank
and then we'll take one more question, and hopefully this question that we will take is...
Hey, Gabby?
Yeah.
Sorry, just to make sure that I think we should probably take one question from the folks who have been asking on the question box on the panel. Is that okay?
Yep.
So someone here is asking if they will be able to use the scholarship to pay for their rent. And I am assuming that this is for the TheDream.Us scholarship. Gabby, would folks be able to pay for their rent with the scholarship?
So not quite a cost of attendance question. This is more directly on TheDream.Us, but I would say go to your scholar guide, and your scholar guide is going to explain to you very specifically how the scholarship gets applied. And so the scholarship, the $25,000 gets applied to tuition and fees first. For most students, that is going to cover everything, and you won't have any money left over. Some who are going to the community colleges and are doing community colleges and getting their bachelor's degree there, you might have some money left over. And if you have any money left over, then you have to apply for books, supplies, and transportation. And then any money that's left over, you can use it to cover your rent. So the long answer is that, but the short answer is more than likely yes, but more than likely you won't be able to cover your rent with the scholarship, because it's going to go towards paying your tuition and fees.
All right, so I think we should move forward. Felipe?
Yeah. So, and I just want to make a comment about that. You know, I mean, it's important, and that's a good question that you asked about, you know, how you can use your scholarship, because oftentimes scholarship providers are looking at your specific cost of attendance or have agreements with your specific colleges. And so if you're using scholarship dollars for something other than what it's specified for, you could actually end up with a gap in your cost of attendance, which could create problems for you later on. So you want to make sure you don't displace money that is intended for one thing on another thing, though that other thing is a very important cost, and one that you're right to explore options for financing, definitely. So, all right, so moving on. We've got the estimated family contribution. I use the word estimated for that E. Some folks use expected, which is one you'll see a lot on documentation that we offer you. It's expected because it's worked off a very specific equation. However, it's an estimate. So the EFC is most often found through the FAFSA, the federal free application for federal student aid. However, you really, if you're not eligible for federal aid, shouldn't be touching the FAFSA. But there are other ways that we can figure out what your EFC is. And David, I've got 2 bullet points, please, if you could put those up. So there's that FAFSA. Let's cross that out. If anyone ever asks you to fill out the FAFSA, you probably want to check in with your scholar advisor, with TheDream.Us, or really ask what the reason is behind that FAFSA, since it isn't going to do anything to help you out. Maybe your school is looking to find your EFC. So let's see here. So what you've got here is a link for the EFC.
If I texted him and said, hey,
and I'm hearing someone else on the
airport tomorrow, but it's early.
Okay, so we've got the EFC.
Sorry, if anyone, any of the panelists that might be having a conversation or not muted, if you could please mute yourself before we continue. Thank you.
All right. So we've got a link here. It's going to be in your toolbar, and it's also available from your TheDream.Us. But what this does, let's talk about what the EFC equation is. The EFC is a fair estimate of a household's quote-unquote financial strength. It's neither good nor bad. It's just an assessment of the following 4 criteria. They look at parent income, student income, the number of people living in the household who are supported by that income, and the number of people in that household supported by that income who will be in college for that one academic year. All right, so it's just looking at these 4 things. Really nothing that anyone can control. Once those numbers go into the equation, they come out and it's your expected family contribution or your estimated family contribution. And that's more or less what your family, your household should be able to contribute for one academic year to your college education. And now Gavi is going to go over the quick EFC calculator with you.
So in your pre-packet, you got this link, and hopefully you had the opportunity to go through it and see it. But practically, this calculator is going to help you look at what your EFC is. You already did this already, actually. When you applied for a scholarship, you gave us this information so that we knew what was your estimated expected contribution. So take some time when you are having some free time and use this tool as you please and as needed. And it's practically you go in there and you just plug in the numbers, and after you plug in the numbers, it gives you your estimated EFC. And many of the colleges and universities will use tools like this to figure out if there are any other scholarship aid available that they can provide for you.
Great. All right, so that's the EFC. It's one of the things that's going to go into our equation. But before we get to that, so let's pull up this question. It's yes or no. Is your family able to help you pay for college?
Okay. Also, looks like folks are right on top of the question, so thank you for all of you who are voting, who are answering the questions right away. We have about 85%. So let's give it 5 more seconds. So if you haven't answered, make sure you do it now, please. Okay, we're at about 90%. I'm going to close it.
And so here's our responses, right? Of the 89% who voted, who answered the question, yes to 30% said yes, their family is able to help them pay for college, and 70% said no. So we see, which is pretty typical, that students do a lot of the heavy lifting on their own. I'm sure this does not reflect any lack of will on our family's part. Sometimes our families can't contribute. When I went to college, I was raised by a single father, so that EFC was entirely on me to raise. And so there, and David, I should add that responses aren't connected to students, right? So students can feel free to answer because these kind of just get all kind of put together, right?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Yeah, so please feel free to vote openly, and honestly, this information just helps us gather some information about folks online. All right, so the next slide here is about grant aid. And that's, Gabby's going to cover this first slide here.
Thank you, Felipe. And hopefully a lot of this information is fresh and new to you, and you're taking some notes. And one of the things that we wanted to talk to you about is that TheDream.Us is not the only place you should be looking for money to help you pay for college. There are other things that are out there for you that you should be aware of. So the first thing is state grants. So if you live in California and if you live in Texas, you know that there are state grants. In California, you have the Cal grants, and March 2nd is the deadline for you to apply for these. So go to your scholar advisor, talk to them about it, and check out and see if you can apply for a state grant. These grants are very generous for the most part, and they can really help you not only meet the gap, but even get a little bit extra money to pay for all those miscellaneous, or even maybe save for the next year, right? And Felipe talked about this at the beginning of the presentation. Maybe all of your money, you have your scholarship and all the money covering your first year, but you don't know what's going to happen your second, third, and fourth year. So you always want to be thinking ahead and saving. The other thing that you want to look at is institutional aid. So some universities actually have money that can provide for the students. And these come usually as presidential scholarships because you have certain GPA. They can come in as grants that they give to students because they're part of different clubs and organizations. If you're in student government, if you're a student leader, you might get a grant. Different departments within the institution might have some money, maybe for you to do some research, for you to help with the college fair, to provide support and help for new scholars, be a mentor. So you should really ask questions and try to find out what kind of institutional aid there are. And of course, outside scholarships. So there is the TheDream.Us, there is a scholarship foundation. There are other programs, and Felipe will talk about where you can find these other scholarships. And the last thing is honors programs. So you should, if you are a first-time college student, you should talk and ask your scholar advisor if there's opportunities for you to join the honors program at your school. Usually, joining the honors program can be either you take your whole set of classes as honors, or you take individual classes like maybe a history class, a chemistry class, part of the honors program. And institutions do have money to either pay for those courses or give you some sort of scholarship because you're part of the honors program. So check those things out. Take some time to ask questions and see if your institutions have either institutional aid grants or if there are other scholarship money. And one of the things that we want to make sure is you shouldn't leave any free money on the table. Try to, as much as you can, apply for all these scholarship money, and then if you get extra, you can save for your second, third, or fourth year. So back at you, Felipe.
Yep. All right. So along with grant aid, we can also include scholarship aid, right? We're talking about free money. So that's going out there and looking for scholarships. Lots of college students I work with them when they're in high school and also while they're in college. And it's very understandable that when we get to college, we think, all right, I'm in college. I don't need to apply for scholarships anymore, right? Or maybe even there are no scholarships for college students. But there are indeed, and you want to look into those. I'm offering you a resource page, which is in your toolbox under handouts. It's just titled resource page. And that's going to offer you lots of websites that I will talk about here shortly. Sorry, one second. So when you're thinking about these applying for scholarships, really, folks come to me and they say, how do I look for scholarships if I'm undocumented, right? Am I looking for scholarships that say undocumented in the title? Well, definitely yes, those, but sometimes it's not in the title. Sometimes it takes a little bit more investigative work to go in and see what are the actual eligibility criteria, right? If the scholarship does not require that you have a social security number, citizenship or legal permanent residence, then you're totally eligible to apply for that scholarship, right? And I would encourage you to do that. Some of the resources, just a few that you're going to find on your page are, for example, this first one is huge. It's a blog set up by a grad student at Harvard who's undocumented herself, and it's called My Undocumented Life. This is a website that I have on my homepage on the internet. So every time I open up the internet, it's the first page I see because it's updated pretty regularly during the regular school year. Things are happening, and the website is always updating, and you're going to find a lot of information not only about scholarships, but about special programs, internship programs that are going on. You're going to learn about different experiences. So lots of folks across the country are putting their art, putting their words, putting their experiences on this website, and I think it's just super helpful to know that lots of folks are going through the same college game, right? And they may be very similar to you in a lot of ways, and so you can kind of relate more, and it will just help you on a day-to-day. Another one is E4FC, or Educators for Fair Consideration. They are a national organization. They're based out of the Bay Area in California. However, they work on providing resources to undocumented folks across the country. They work with the Scholarship Foundation of St. Louis and helped us with scholarship dollars. They've also helped us with planning, with getting to conferences. They help students who want to be entrepreneurs, who want to go to grad school, who want to go to medical school. You definitely want to be looking at E4FC. Actually, there's so much information on E4FC's website that you may initially be overwhelmed, to be quite honest, but don't be overwhelmed. Really sift through that stuff and see if there's stuff there that can be of service to you. I think that's one that you could visit honestly on a daily or weekly basis and learn something new every single time. And then the Immigrant Legal Resource Center is also a good one. They have community resources. The actual link here is on the screen that you can see. So I would encourage you to write that down, ilrc.org /community-resources, just because there you're going to find a lot. That is a national organization as well. And so scholarship aid really comes down to the search, right? I have a student I know who made $2,500 in 15 minutes. They were just doing all these scholarship searches. They came across a scholarship, and all it required was a paragraph, a statement about who that student's hero was in their life, and to include a picture of that person. So this student filled out the application, wrote the paragraph about how his mom inspired him, is his hero, took a selfie with his mom on his phone, attached it, sent it in, and won $2,500 off of that scholarship. So it's really, really hard to say, you know what, I applied for a scholarship and I didn't get it, so I'm not going to apply anymore, right? But it's kind of like that. You just got to apply for everything and see what comes back. I can't guarantee that you're going to get a scholarship if you apply for it, but I can guarantee that you will not get a scholarship if you don't apply for it. So when it comes down to those two things, apply or don't apply, you want to apply every single time. Is it work? Yes. It's going to take time. It's going to take energy, but it's worth it if you make some money in the end. All right. So really think about that scholarship aid. When we're looking at miscellaneous costs, when we're thinking about how am I going to, maybe $2,500 is going to cover rent for very long, but you know, how am I going to pick up just some extra cash that's going to help me on the month to month, right? And if it's $2,500, that's something I could spread out for a semester if it's going to help me out just each week a little bit. All right. So that's scholarship aid. David, can you pull up the next question, please? All right. So do you have scholarships other than TheDream.Us? Let's see. Are we putting the polls up, David? There we go. So do you have other scholarships besides TheDream.Us? This is yes or no. We had 90% voted on the last one. Hopefully everyone will vote on this one. We just want to know if our students out there are receiving other scholarships besides TheDream.Us.
And one thing I did want to add, Felipe, is that the TheDream.Us on the website, we do have a resource tab, and students can see the links to all those that you mentioned and more. So there's one that we've talked about in the past, Felipe, and we were actually talking about it the other day as we were working on this presentation. But Malda, for example, has a resource, Act on a Dream, which is an organization off of the Harvard students that have put a list together. So we do have a couple of other resources and websites that students can check out on the TheDream.Us resource page.
Awesome. And for sure, you know what I say? Go to the resource pages of every organization and every website that you feel is applicable to you, because those resources are there for everybody on the internet. You may find a resource for you somewhere that you didn't really think was for you. So it doesn't hurt to, you know, go to Google, type in undocumented resources, and see which organizations pop up, and check out resources on all their pages. All right, so it looks like the poll, we've got everyone who's going to vote. David?
Yep, so we have about 90%.
All right, so 90% again, and we have 33% of our students who reported do have a scholarship or scholarships outside of the TheDream.Us, and 67% don't. Again, we're just taking honest measurements. So you don't have an outside scholarship besides the TheDream.Us, but you know that you can. You know that you can go out there and look for resources and apply for them. And that's what it's going to take to make sure that you can click yes on that question. So the next question is, do you have any state grants?
All right, so we'll give folks another 10 seconds or so to answer this one. Looks like we have about 80%. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close this poll. So if you haven't voted, make sure you do it now. Okay. All right. So can you see the results?
I can, yeah. So 25% report yes, and 75% say no.
Okay.
All right. So if we visit our map again, we've covered cost of attendance, everything that goes into that. And we've learned about what the EFC is and how we can calculate that. We have a resource in our toolbox under handouts that you can go ahead and do that. And then we talked about grant aid. So the EFC and grant aid, scholarship aid, those are going to go all to your cost of attendance to help bring that down. If you can bring that down all the way to 0 with your EFC and grant aid, then you are set to go for that academic year. But if you're not, if you've got a number under there, you still got some remaining unmet needs, all right? And you would fill in those unmet needs with more grants, more scholarships, or if you have access to loans, that's an option. However, if you're going to take out a loan, you want to make sure that you're talking to folks who know about loans and can advise you on that. Because, you know, there are good loans and there are not so good loans. And folks are quick to hand those out without any question and just offer them and offer them. You don't want to accept just any loan. You want to make sure you understand the terms of that loan, not only while you're taking the loan out, but when you have to repay it. All right. Next slide, please. And then, so here's the unmet need. And you can just put all those bullets up, David. So the unmet need is the difference between your cost of attendance and your funding. Your funding is your EFC, grant aid, scholarship aid, right? And you can apply for more scholarships, you can take out loans, or you can work. And there's a guide, the USCIS Right to Work DACA guide, that you definitely want to check out and read. Then, of course, there's savings. Gavi has talked a lot about what happens when you have money left over after you've received a scholarship and your school bill has been paid, what you do with it. Maybe we need to use it for our miscellaneous or our day-to-days, but if we don't, we can put that into a savings account and say, this is for next semester, this is for next year, this is for a rainy day. Now, I would like to introduce to everybody Diana Lima Lopez, who's a sophomore at Eastern. Oh, you'll be unmuted in just a moment. Yeah. Diana Lima Lopez is at Eastern Connecticut State University. She's both a scholar for the Scholarship Foundation of St. Louis and TheDream.Us. And now I'll turn it over to Diana.
Hello, everyone. My name is Diana Lima Lopez. I attend Eastern Connecticut State University. I am a bio major with a minor in bioinformatics, and I will be a sophomore come fall 2017. I am a recipient of the Dream.Us Opportunity Scholarship, which pays up to $80,000 for 4 years, or $20,000 per school year. I'm also a recipient of a Bravo grant from the Scholarship Foundation of St. Louis, which has offered me $6,255 for the 2017-2018 school year. David, if you could, thank you. My cost of attendance can be broken down as follows. The total for my tuition, fees, room and board is $20,000. For books, I usually spend between $500 and $600. I rent my books from Chegg, Amazon, or the school's bookstore. I try to find the cheapest option for myself to keep all of my costs down. For supplies, I usually spend between $400 and $600, which includes personal items, cleaning supplies, school supplies, extra paper because I take extensive notes, different calculators that my professors require me to have for different math and bio classes. As far as my transportation, my total ranges from $3,000 to $3,200. This includes my plane tickets and Uber. I try to go home whenever I can, whenever we have super long breaks. I live in Missouri, but I go to school in Connecticut, so that's why my transportation cost is really expensive. At least to me, it's really expensive. For my miscellaneous, for my entertainment, I keep $1,200. That's for whenever I want to go out to eat or see a movie, go to a concert, travel to either New York or Boston. For medical expenses, the school's insurance is $3,000, but I opted out. I personally talked to my academic advisor on campus, and she gave me the forms I needed to fill out to opt out. I know there was a link on my school's website that I could have gone to, or I would suggest to go to your health center. They should also have forms for you to opt out the medical insurance if you want to.
Okay.
And yes.
Oh, sorry. Just wanted to maybe make a quick note about since Diana is one of our opportunity scholars. She, you know, it really depends on which school you are attending. At Eastern Connecticut, because their health insurance is so expensive, they give you the option to opt out. But I just wanted to make a note that you know, it really depends on the institution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Even though I opted out of my medical insurance at Eastern, I still left it in the equation just so you can see how everything comes together. So my total cost of attendance is about $28,600 minus $2,346 that is EFC, minus $20,000 from TheDream.Us, and minus $6,254 from the St. Louis Scholarship Foundation, which leaves me with zero unmet need. I work at the registrar's office on Eastern's campus. I can work from between 10 to 12 hours weekly at a minimum wage, which in Connecticut is $10.10 per hour. If I have any unmet need throughout the school year, whether it's any medical expenses I have or other fees that I have to pay, I usually use my checks and any money left over to pay for that. When everything is paid for and done for, I put the remaining money in my savings account just to create a cushion for myself if I may ever need it. And that's my math. Thank you for listening and tuning in to the webinar. I suggest that everyone tries to figure out their math 101 because it does come in handy. This is actually the first time I do my math, and it really did help a lot. I'll stick around till the end just in case any of you guys have any questions. Felipe?
Awesome. Thank you, Diana. And the math that Diana's gone over is her cost of attendance for 1 year, right? Once you have this cost of attendance, you can, of course, do projections out for 2, 3, 4 years, and you can try to create a long-term plan. Again, we're planning, so we're doing the best we can, making the most accurate measurements of our expenses and resources as possible, right? But Diana's math is great. Thank you, Diana, so much. David, could you please pull up the next question? So Diana talked about working on campus to help meet her EFC. How do you, or I'm sorry, do you work? So it's a quick yes or no. Do you work?
It looks like we are at about 70%. Let me give folks, if you haven't answered, I'll give you 5 more seconds so you can go ahead and get your answers in. Okay, I'm closing now.
All right. You got everyone, David? So that's 50% of you work and 43% of you do not work at this time. You may find that working is an option for you on your campus, so it's definitely a conversation to be had. Lots of folks think that they're not sure if they know they don't qualify for the federal work-study program, so they think they can't work on campus. But as Diana just pointed out, you can work on campus. You, the student, just have to go out and look for those opportunities. Ask questions of folks. Are there openings in this office? Is there any way you can help me work? Now, for those folks who did answer that they do work, how many hours per week do you work?
Okay, so let's give folks a couple seconds here. We do have this, in this round of questions, we have about 4 questions that we're asking, so make sure you stay tuned and keep your eye on the screen so you can answer the questions. So yeah, if folks could, I'm going to give folks about 5 more seconds. So if you haven't answered the question, make sure you go in and let us know if you do work, how many hours you work. Okay. Closing now. Go ahead, Felipe.
All right. All right. So there we've got the breakdown everybody can see on the screen. Looks like about 30% of those who reported are working about 20 to 30 hours a week. So they're carrying a significant load of work. And we have 29%, almost 30%, who are working 10 hours or fewer per week. You know, and if I could just talk about work first. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we have another question. Let's do that. So how much of your job income do you estimate goes towards your college education? Less than half, about half, more than half, or all of it?
So we'll give folks 5 more seconds. If you haven't voted, make sure you do it now. We have about 60%. And I'm assuming that's because the folks who do not work are not answering the question, so that makes sense.
Yep.
Closing it now, sharing it now, and we have one more question after this. So go ahead, Felipe.
Yep. So it looks like less than half, 41%, about half, 31%, more than half, 16%, and all of it, 13%. The last question.
Give me 1 second. Okay, here we go.
All right. How much of your income, if any, do you estimate goes to support your family? That could be in any capacity. Less than half, about half, more than half, or all of it.
All right, so let's give folks just a couple more seconds here to answer the question. We're at about 60%. Okay, closing now.
All right. So it looks like about less than half of you, or I'm sorry, 55% of you who work are spending less or providing less than half. About half is 24%, more than half 14%, and all of it 6%. This is very, very common, right? Students are helping families out, families are helping students out. We're all working together as a team. That makes perfect sense. And now we're going to turn it over to Gabby.
Thank you, Felipe. So let's do your own math, and let's see what you come up with. So we're going to give all of you a little bit of time to look at your pre-packet you received, and you would have also received there your cost of attendance sheet for the 2016-2017 year. And the idea here is for you to look at and see how much your cost of attendance is. And then what we want you to do is look at your cost of attendance and then subtract your EFC, your expected family contribution, minus the aid that you are receiving. So all aid, including if you're getting any state grants, other scholarships, like Diana has the TheDream.Us and the St. Louis scholarship. And then that's going to equal your unmet need. So we are going to see from our attendees, and we know we have some hands raised from before. And we're going to pick a couple of people who are raising their hands. So let's see. All right, so we're going to unmute some folks to answer this question. So what we want you to tell us is, what is your unmet need? And then see if you have any idea of how you are going to be paying for that or coming up with that money. So give me 1 second, because as the hands raises, it changes up a little bit. All right, so if you're ready to answer this, I'm going to click on somebody. All right, I'm going to unmute Jessica Valdez. So Jessica, you are unmuted. So Jessica, tell us your cost of attendance, what school you're at, your cost of attendance, your EFC, your aid, and then how much is your unmet need.
Okay, so I'm going to be attending UC Santa Cruz in the fall in California. And my estimated cost of attendance is around $36,000. And from my previous financial aid that they've given me is around $24,000. So they haven't given me my official one because I needed to send them my AB 540 affidavit form. And I got like a small $250 scholarship and then the TheDream.Us one. And my expected family contribution is $2,100. So that leaves me with about, I believe, $4,000 to pay on my own, around there. And so what I plan to do is right now I've been trying to get a job over the summer, and I just got hired, but I haven't started working till like another 3 weeks. So I want to try and save up whatever I get from working, and then after that I also applied for a couple of internships that actually give me money towards my tuition once I'm in school. So I'm hoping on getting those and with the job, and hopefully if I get one of those internships, then I think that will definitely help me cover for the rest of my tuition.
Great. So it sounds like you know how much the unmet need is, and it also sounds like you have a good plan and you have different options on how you're going to do that. So we're really proud of you, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
No. All right, so now let's take one more person to do that, and we're going to ask Antonio. Antonio, I'm going to mute you now. Antonio Rodriguez. Antonio? Antonio, can you? Yes. There we go.
Yeah.
So Antonio, tell us what college you're in, your cost of attendance minus your EFC, your aid, and what your unmet need is, and if you have any idea of how you're going to be able to.
Well, I couldn't find it on STC, the website. But I have like a different question.
What institution do you go to?
South Texas College.
South Texas?
Yes.
Okay.
It's because after like everything, I have to pay like 1,000. Sorry. And well, I've been trying to get a job, but every time I go, it doesn't like they don't hire me.
And do you think it's because of your DACA status?
Yes, they've actually told me like, no, we're not looking for DACA people. We want like other people with residence or citizens.
Okay. So this is really important of what you're bringing up, and Felipe spoke about this, and he even shared that there is, USCIS has a form that either you can use to bring with you to your employers when they're telling you this information, and show them, right, that you have the right to work and they're not supposed to be denying you that employment. There's actually been different lawsuits across the country. There's a lawsuit right now happening in Orlando. MALDEF has been suing different companies for employment discrimination. So one, if you do that, if you have heard that and you have the names of the employers that have told you that, I suggest that you contact MALDEF and let them know. And the second thing is that you arm yourself, and all of our scholars arm themselves with knowledge. And so this form that David just pulled up, it's a good guidance to give your employer and to remind them that just because you have DACA doesn't necessarily mean that they shouldn't be employing you. The only reason why they can deny your employment is if it's a federal agency that is looking for only people who are citizens, and that's more for background purposes, and also because federal agencies do have the right to only look for U.S. citizens. So what I would say is look at this information that we put in the presentation. Look at this USCIS.gov guide. Take it. You have to disclose and tell them that you have DACA. It's up to you to say it or not. But in your interview, you don't have to say that to anyone. After you've received your employment, but that is not any reason to deny you.
Yes. Okay.
So, and then back on your cost of attendance, what I suggest that you do is that you go to the website and you go to the financial aid site, and there you're going to see not only the tuition and fees, but all the cost of attendance as well. Okay. Thank you, Antonio. So I'm going to, Felipe, do you think we should take one more, or should we just go ahead and go on to the next piece?
Well, it's up to you.
Okay, let's take one more. And so let's see who is ready to do their math with us. So I'm going to call on Jesus Huerta. Give me 1 second because these little things move as people are raising their hand. Jesus? Jesus going once.
Hello.
Hi, Jesus. Jesus, tell us
Hello.
what and then tell us your cost of attendance and your math.
Okay, so I currently go to Hunter CUNY here in New York, and after doing all these Math 101, I have zero needs. Because I'm currently working, and all my money goes to saving for my master's and helping my parents pay bills.
That all sounds like great news, Jesus. So we're really excited that you are at Hunter. It sounds like we have a lot of New Yorkers with us today. We have some folks from California and Texas, but that's great, and it's so good to hear that you're also thinking ahead. And I do want to tell you that a master's degree is possible, a PhD degree is possible. It's hard, but it's possible. So to everyone that's listening and has the desire to go to graduate school, yes, the money becomes harder and harder to get as you're progressing through your education, but it's not impossible. And I'm really happy to hear that you're saving up and looking forward to your master's degree. Okay, back to you, Felipe.
Yeah, awesome. And just to piggyback on Gabi's point, go to e4fc.org and look at what they're doing. They've got pre-med scholars, they've got graduate students, they're doing a lot with this. And so I encourage students who are interested in grad school to check out those resources. All right, so how and why to calculate carefully. We've heard from students who have need. We heard from students who are finding out that they don't have the need, that they're doing what they need to do and they're making it, but we have students who are looking for resources. And we have students, I bet, out there who are a lot like me when I was in college and are just like, can I just not ask these questions? Can I just not know about this stuff so I can say I didn't know about it? Which is fair, but let's not do that, right? Let's think about calculating carefully. And why should we do that? Well, all of the scholars today, you are all receiving a scholarship from TheDream.Us, which has terms that I definitely encourage you to look into and learn about so that you can make sure that you have a timely plan set up. If you are working on a 4-year degree, you will find that you have about 12 semesters or 5 years of funding from TheDream.Us. That is spread out differently for each student, so you want to connect and figure out how that's going to work with your math. If you're going to a 2-year degree, for a 2-year degree, that's 6 semesters or 3 years, so that's 150% of your time, right? You definitely want to think about that. How far is your money going to stretch? How much time do you really have with this money in your pocket? And one of the things to think about is time to completion, right? When I was a student, I definitely thought, I'll just take 2 classes this semester, and I'll take an extra one next semester, maybe, right? Or like, you know, things are going pretty hectic right now. I think I'm just going to take a lighter load this semester. Well, that works, but what it happened to me is I was in school for much longer than I wanted to be. All right? So what we find is it takes about 15 credit hours per semester to graduate on time, meaning within 2 years if you're at a community college, or within 4 years if you're at a 4-year college. That's 15 credit hours per semester. All right? Why is that important? Well, the programs require it. And many students tend to think that because what they always hear, 12 credit hours is full-time, that they're on track to graduate on time. No, it just means you're in school full-time if you're going 12 credit hours. It doesn't mean you're on track to graduate in time, all right? You want to make sure you're looking at that and figuring out how many credit hours you should be taking each semester. And starting the semester at 15 credit hours is not enough, right? You got to think about withdrawals, incompletes, or Fs. Those will bring your credit hours down. And not only that, but add to your future credit hours, because now you're going to have to retake that class. Not only will you have to retake the class, but you're going to have to pay for that class again. And you may very well have to be paying for the new edition of the textbook for that class, not the old edition. You think, oh, well, I'm okay. I got this book, right? Nope, you need the next edition for the professor. So you want to think about that. Like I say, I took my time and said, hey, you know what, it'll take an extra semester. Well, that extra semester turned into 2 semesters, which means a year, and I ended up spending a lot more money in the long run to stay in school for an extra year. And we think about this, we think about the money we're spending, but not only that, think about the money you're losing, because you're not going into your career field. You're still in school. So instead of going to college for 4 years, you're going for 5 years. That's a whole year you're outside of your career, and you're not making that money that you could be making with a career level position. If you look at your screen here, we've got a breakdown, and we're thinking about these colleges, especially when we think about colleges who offer flat rates. If we look at a flat rate college who charges $3,000 regardless of whether the student takes 12 semester credit hours or 18 semester credit hours, you can see what happens to a student who takes only 12. Granted, they're in school full-time officially. However, it's going to take them an extra 2 semesters or an extra year to graduate with their degree. If you look over at a student who says, okay, you know what, I'm not going to do 12, I'm going to do 15, well, that's okay, but they're only shaving off, you know, what is that, 2 semesters, all right? So they're reducing that by 2 semesters, and they're graduating within 5 years, and then 18 credit hours. And you see it ends up being less expensive. $30,000 if you're taking 12 credit hours per semester, 24 if you're taking 15, and 21 if you're taking 18. And you'll see that last semester ends up that student only needs to take 12 because they were able to do 18. However, I want to emphasize that this is very important to think about. This is important knowledge for you to have. But this does not mean that you have to break yourself to take 15 or 18 credit hours, right? We want to be honest with ourselves through and through, which means we've got to be honest and assess, how much am I working? How many credit hours am I taking? Is that the best way to break up my time, my financial resources? Can I take 15 credit hours? And if you can't take 15 credit hours in a semester because you have to work or you have other obligations, well, you take 12. But then you know that you've got to come up with those extra 3 semester hours somewhere in the year. And when would that be? That would probably be, in most cases, summer school. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let Gabi talk to you a little bit about what those pathways are and how summer school can help you reduce your cost of attendance over your college career.
Yes. Thank you, Felipe. And that's right. So there is different ideas and different ways you can map this out. And this is where talking to your scholar advisor or your actual school advisor, that you can map out and see which classes you can be taking and how long it's going to take for you to graduate. And one of the ideas is to take as many credits as you can during your fall and spring semester and not work during that time, and then try to work during your times of the spring break or your summer break. Or you can work part-time during that time and then dedicate yourself in the summer to work full-time. The other thing, as Felipe was mentioning, is that you can take, for example, 12 credits, do full-time in the fall and the spring, and then take some and pick up some credits in the summer. What one note and a caveat to all this is that there are some institutions that do not allow students to take summer courses because of the way the monies and the scholarship work. So it's really, really important to be working with your scholar advisor and asking these questions as you're mapping out how you're going to be taking your classes. So back to you.
All right.
Awesome. Oh, yeah. So actually, it's back to me. One of the things that we do want to tell the students is there is opportunities for you to save some money. And there's actually a question that came up in our chat box. A scholar was saying, I took some college credits during high school. So if this was a presentation for high school students, I would be telling everyone, take as many AP courses or actual college classes as you can, because that's going to help you save a lot of money. Now you're in college, right? So one of the things that you can do to save money during college is to actually start at the community college. A lot of undocumented students have done this, and this is a really great way to save money. So you start at the community college, you finish, you do your associate's degree, and then you transfer to the four-year institution. There are some pros and cons of this approach. One of the pros, of course, is that you save a lot of money. Community college tend to be half, if not one-third, of the price of four-year institutions. But some of the cons or some of the things to look out for is, will my credits transfer? Sometimes four-year institutions don't take all the credits from the community college. So it's really important that you're working with your advisor, both at the four-year institution and the community college, if you want to take this approach, to ensure that your credits are going to transfer. The other thing that you want to look at is what they call pathway programs, or 2+2 programs. And what they do is that there's agreements between the community college and the four-year that says, if the student goes and graduates from a two-year institution, they can transfer and start as a junior at the four-year. So many institutions, for example, in CUNY they do this, Miami-Dade College, Broward College, if you graduate from those institutions with an associate's degree, you not only are able to get accepted right away into Florida International University, the four-year institution, but all your college classes that you took transfer. The other con is that while all your college classes can transfer, they may ask you to take more classes because it's a more rigorous program that they have. So the point here is, look for different ways to save money, but also make sure that you ensure that your four-year institution and your two-year institution have some sort of agreement that won't make you actually put you back because you went to the community college first. So now it is back to you, Felipe.
All right, awesome. So what happens if we just close our eyes and we hope for the best, right? It's a good question. Well, the answer is you run out of money, right? We don't think about our credit hours per semester. We don't think about where our resources are or what our true expenses are. we're just going to close our eyes and hope for the best, which is what I did for a long time. Never a good idea, right? You can run out of money, which is not the beginning of the, or is just the beginning of the problem, right? You run out of money, which means you've got to take a leave of absence from your school, right? And what does that mean? That means a disruption of the academic year. And if you run out of money and you're not able to pay your school balance, what that means is your official transcript is going to be placed on hold until you pay that balance. Oftentimes students think, okay, you know what, I took an L at that college, but I'm going to go to this other school, right? Which sounds good, but that other school is going to ask for an official transcript from your previous college. And your previous college will hold that transcript hostage until you can pay that balance, right? And so you want to make sure you think about these things when you're thinking about, I'm just going to close my eyes and hope for the best, right? You never want to find yourself in this situation. And Gabi, I think you had a couple of things to add on this slide.
Yes. So one of the things that it's really important for all scholars is to make sure they're reading their scholar program guide. And we understand and know that things happen, and sometimes there are disruptions in your life that make it impossible for you to take courses that semester. And many students will ask us, you know, what do I need to do? How can I do this? And the answer is on your scholar program guide. So please make sure that you are going to the TheDream.Us website, that you're going up to the left-hand corner where it says for scholars. That's where your scholar hub is. And you'll see there you have some tools, your scholarship tools, where you'll see your program guide. And one thing to note is that in August, we are going to be having the scholar or the new scholar orientation on August 2nd. It is mandatory for every new scholar to participate. And then the next day on August 3rd, we're having a back to college, back to school pep rally for all our current scholars, where we're also going to go over the scholar guide as a refresher. These two things are mandatory for all of our scholars to attend. So please make sure you make a note of that, and that you're using your scholar program guide as your resource to see what you can do if you have to take a semester off, if you have to take less than 12 credits, and how you need to communicate that with us and your scholar advisor.
Right. Back to me. All right. So how to get help walking through this. David, I believe you're going to bring up this award calculator so everyone can look at it together. And here, this is a great tool, everybody. Student, you want to look at this. It's going to help you kind of put all of these different numbers together and calculate for you what your cost of attendance is. Now, this traditionally is an award letter comparison tool. But if you are already going to, you know what school you're going to, you can just use that first column to do this math, right? And so if we scroll down just a little bit, David, if we can get that college names just to the top of the screen, that should give us enough of the view. And so you're going to see this has got a spot for each and every category that you could have. And you can always replace these. So you're like, well, I'm not going to do the student health insurance, so I can take that out, right? You know, I don't have a parent contribution, but I do have an EFC that I cover, so I would put that under my student contribution. And not only is this going to help you calculate the cost of attendance, but it's also going to track your resources. And scroll down just a little bit more, David, so you can see the full financial aid. So then you see financial aid, and even that's broken up into grants and scholarships, other resources. Then you have financial aid that it comes from employment, and financial aid from loans if you're taking out loans. And if your loan isn't here, you can go ahead and scratch off Federal Perkins loan, and you can put the name of the loan that you have out, right? And this is going to help you. You'll see a little blue button here that's calculate. That's going to do all that math for you, right? It's really helpful just to have it down in this kind of format. And what you can do, David, if you want to go back to the slide, if you want help figuring this out, working on this sheet, you can definitely tap your scholar advisor on campus, or you can reach out to TheDream.Us, right? Great. And then next slide. All right, so taxation on your scholarship. This is just a last minute thing, students, and I just want to let you know that we are not tax advisors, not at TheDream.Us, not the Scholarship Foundation of St. Louis. So what follows is general advice for your review. Again, we're offering you general advice, but it's up to you to go and learn what your specific case is. So it is possible that your scholarship is taxable, right, by the government. And we've got 3 points that you want to just kind of check into. If your scholarship or scholarships do not exceed tuition and fees, they are not taxable, right? And you may think, okay, they're not, I'm good. But if your scholarships are designated for room, board, or incidentals, they may be taxable, right? And income from wages and any scholarship in excess of tuition and fees may be taxable also. So what do you do, right? We got you may be taxed, you may not be taxed. The most important thing is that you talk to a tax professional, someone who helps you with your taxes and knows this stuff, or going to your school financial aid office and asking about this information. All right, and make sure you look in the handout. So we do have a taxation form that you would want to review. And so here are our final questions. And this goes back to the beginning a little bit. What were your initial thoughts about this workshop? Do you think this workshop is helpful, confusing? Is it too much info, or is it not enough info? And David will put that poll up for you. All right, David. That response. David, I can't hear you, but could you put the response up? I'd like to just make a comment. Okay,
Sorry,
so it looks like
I lost connection for a second.
Oh, okay.
But it looks like we're back on. So,
all right. Can we put that response up for that question?
Yes.
Perfect. So about 92% of you said this was helpful. 3% of you said it was confusing. 3% said it was too much information, and 2% of you said it's not enough info, which is great. Really, this is a lot of information, all right? And really, we don't expect you to know it inside and out at the end of this webinar, right? Like, I don't get to just say it and then you know it inside and out, right? But what we wanted to do was to present this information to you and let you know that this information is out there and that you have the right to go and ask questions, do your investigative work, apply for those resources. Really, you should be asking questions about anything you didn't understand today. You should be talking to your scholar advisor, your school advisor, and asking questions about those things that are confusing, and really just doing what you can to make the best plan moving forward. All right? And so for the last question is, how confident are you that you have sufficient information to assess your ability to pay for your college education? Not confident, somewhat confident, confident, or very confident?
And I think we should note that this is the same question that we asked at the beginning. So hopefully, we're trying to gauge if, the presentation affected your thoughts on being able to how confident you are to pay for your college education now that you've heard the presentation. So let me give folks, looks like we have about 85%. If we get up to 90, oh, it's climbing up a little bit. 5 more seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1. Awesome.
All right, and there are the results. So it looks like a lot of folks moved into the somewhat confident or confident, right? And we still got 12% who are very confident, which is great. But what's even better is that we've got 0% not confident, right? So everybody's confident, or at least somewhat confident, that they've got sufficient information to assess their ability to pay for college education. If you have questions, remember, ask those questions every single time. If you see something that you want to apply for and you're eligible to apply for that, you should apply for it. That's what it's all about. It's all about you and making sure that you have a plan.
And I just wanted to do this real quick, just to give folks a sense of these were the results from the question when we asked at the beginning of the presentation. So it went from 13 to 0, which is really awesome to see.
I'm very confident. Went from 2% to 12%.
Awesome.
All right.
All right. So really, this is all to say thank you very much for inviting me to talk today about this very, very complicated stuff. It's not the most exciting material to be talking about. We do not want to think about how much money we've got to pay or how much money we have or don't have, but it's important to think about this stuff. And like I said at the very beginning, that's why I love my job so much, because I really just get to share with students the questions that they should be asking, because no one expects you to know all the questions you should be asking, but that's why advisors are here for you. So make sure you ask those questions. Know the measurements to take and be honest with yourself when you're taking those measurements. And again, thank you to TheDream.Us for inviting us to speak today. And now I'm going to hand it over to Gabi.
Great, thank you. And right now, we have a few seconds before we have to end. I just want to thank you, Felipe, for your time, Faith, Diana. Thank you for sharing your journey and also your knowledge with all of our scholars. We do have a few more seconds, and before we take some questions, just want to remind people August 2nd and 3rd, mandatory orientations, August 2nd for new scholars, August 3rd for current scholars. And like Faith said, you got to take charge of your future. You're already doing that. We're so very proud of you. We believe in every single one of you, and that's why you're a Dream.Us scholar. And tomorrow, we will have our second day of our 3-day leadership training. Make sure to look at the pre-work. We're going to be sending out an email to everyone. There is some new information that has come in from the folks that are going to be doing the presentation tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. And so if you can, raise your hand and we'll take, we have 8 more minutes before we'll be signing off, so we can answer a few more questions. So raise your little hand, and once your hand is raised, we will unmute you. Okay, so I'm going to unmute Omar. Please tell us, Omar, what school you're from and what your question is.
My name is Omar. I will be attending Arizona State University. I really don't have a question, but if I'm allowed, I would like to give some input on having the experience from transferring from a community college to a 4-year institution for the new scholars like myself.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm a new scholar. I actually did my first 2 years of my 4-year degree of mechanical engineering at a community college, and I just want to say to all the new scholars, don't be discouraged to get some credits in the community college. It's actually way cheaper. My first option was going directly to a 4-year institution. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. I graduated from top 2% of my class with a 4.7 GPA. I unfortunately didn't get enough scholarships, but I did manage to get 2, which paid in full my tuition for the 2 years I was at my community college. And while I was there, I was also able to land an internship with a petroleum engineer. So don't hesitate to take some summer courses at a community college, or starting off at a community college and then transferring to a four-year institution. You never know what kind of opportunities could be there. What I did was simply look at the major map for Arizona State University and then clicked on the transfer guide and simply, just researched the classes that were available at community college and transferred. As of today, I'm going to a summer class, which will be the last class that was able to transfer to a four-year institution. So that's basically all the input I would like to give for all the new scholars. If it's an option where your community college does have credits that transfer to your four-year institution that you will ultimately like to attend, I would greatly, advise in doing so. Even if you're a full-time student at a regular four-year institution, you can maybe even take some courses on the side, some night courses at community college, and even graduate ahead of time.
Great, thank you so much, Omar. And maybe we'll have you do some regional presentations for the Arizona students. The information you've given is invaluable, so thank you so much.
No problem.
All right, so we're going to take a question from Herla, and Herla, I am going to be unmuting you now. Hello. Tell us what school you're at.
Hello.
Yes.
My name is Herla, and I go to Broward College for the fall. And my question is, if you have a temporary protected status, and if it's going to be expired, how will the scholarship go about it?
So this is something that we are tracking, and thank you, Herla, for being open about that. The TPS is something that has been renewed, and both like TPS and DACA, right now there's a lot of uncertainty about those programs. One thing that we do want all of our scholars to know is that we are tracking it. We are trying to figure out what's happening and how we can lend our voice to ensure that people know how important these programs are to not just our scholars but to the nation. As things are developing, we will be communicating with all of you. As the Arizona scholars know, we've been sending out emails to them because of the court ruling. But with TPS, it's the same thing. We're going to keep you informed as things develop. We were really happy to see that TPS did get renewed until January. So hopefully we're crossing fingers that the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security realizes and sees the importance of this program. So just stay connected with us. Make sure you're reading the emails that we're sending from TheDream.Us so that you can stay abreast of the information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so we, I think, have time for just one more, and I am going to be unmuting Samuel. Samuel, tell us what school you're at and what your question is.
Hello. Hi, my name is
Hello.
Samuel. I'll be going to the University of Houston this coming fall. My question is about the state grants. I do not have any idea that we could get any state grants, and I was wondering if you could give information about how we can do that, and where we can get them from.
Yes, definitely. And Felipe, do you know about the state grants? I can speak to it too, but
sure. What state grants are we talking about?
In Texas, yes.
In Texas, yeah. So you have the TASFA in Texas that you can be filing, and you should. I don't know the date, so that's something you're going to need to look into. But the TASFA is the Texas financial aid program for state grants.
Okay.
Yeah, and it works similarly. Works similarly like the FAFSA, where you do have to fill out a form.
Yes.
But this is where talking to your scholar advisor. So I would make an appointment to see Dr. Raven Jones, who's the advisor for the Dream.Us at the University of Houston, and asking her about this. Like Felipe says, there are some deadlines and times that you have to be able to apply, but this is money from the state that gives to students who are undocumented or who meet the HB 1403 law. So I would, highly suggest that you talk to your scholar advisor and you ask her where you can fill out the TAFSA.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. So sadly, we've run out of time, but I feel that Felipe and everything that you have presented, Diana, has been just so incredible and so important, and I think our scholars have shown us, right, how important this information was. So we are going to be sending out an email to every single one of you with the presentation. We're also going to send out all the little handouts and information that Felipe spoke to. So make sure that you are checking your email and you're getting that. And if you have any undocumented friends or people that you know, share this information with them. Even though they're not the Dream.Us scholar, this information could be really helpful to a lot more people. So with that said, I just want to end once again thanking the Scholarship Foundation of St. Louis for this wonderful presentation. My colleague David, who worked really, really hard in putting this together and helped us manage this presentation today. And of course, every single one of you who made the time and put out the commitment to listen to this presentation. Thank you so much, and we will see you tomorrow.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
I need to stop.